Hello, Kim here, and welcome to today's recording. I'll be talking about the energy that is occurring on the 11th of July and how that could be playing out already and afterwards. Okay, so to begin with, there's going to be a Cardinal Grand Cross on that day, and the cardinal part of this Grand Cross just means that it will be in signs that have that cardinal energy. And cardinal energy is about initiation and change. So where these cardinal signs are happens to be at the same point that the seasons change. So that's a definite change there. There's not going to be any doubt about that. But it's always in the flow, isn't it? So as the seasons change, it is the perfect cycle for our ecosystem and for the way that we live. So I want to see this energy as good as how it's could play out in a higher perspective. Because all of this can look quite scary. And I've fallen for that in the past and felt there was going to be doom and gloom. But that hasn't played out, and so I want to continue to stay on the side of love and the higher aspect to this. Although there will be some areas or some people, countries, part of humanity that will be experiencing this on a lower or a more raw level. And that's because that's perfect. That's how it has to be for the evolution of all of this. The same with all the seasons. So in winter it can get damn cold, but the earth needs that cold to minimize bacteria. And when in summer it gets really hot. So there are always going to be higher and lower vibrations for each season and for each aspect. So there's never a complete right or wrong with anything. So I want to keep looking at this in its entire energy. So it's some of us will experience it in the raw manner and some of us will experience this in a more refined area. It just depends on where we are in life, and that is perfect too. Everything is perfect, even though it seems imperfect. This is a really big time. Let's not underestimate this. It's a huge shift for humanity, but we've chosen to come here for this. So it's all how we need it to be, to improve, because that's what anything is. It's to keep the ecosystem going and to move with the changes in the energy. And as our whole solar system is moving out of this cloud of dust that has protected us from galactic energy for absolute centuries, millions of centuries, we're now moving out of that. So we're starting to experience more galactic energy, and we haven't had that before. None of this we've had before. So we're going to have to move and shift with the energy and the times. And we can do this. We've got this. Okay, so sorry, I digress. And let's get back to this Cardinal Grand Cross. So it's going to be with Mercury in Cancer, and Mercury is opposing Pluto in Capricorn. So Mercury is the thinker and the communicator. And as Mercury is in Cancer, which represents the home and emotions, there will be emotions around the home and thinking about those emotions and thinking about how we can do things differently. Now Pluto, I just want to describe to you what Pluto means and represents and does in our lives. And as it's an outer planet, it works with generations, whereas personal planets like Mars, Venus, Mercury, the Sun and the Moon, they work more closely with our daily lives on a more personal level, whereas the outer planets, Uranus, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune and Pluto, they all work on a much bigger scale, and their interaction with our daily life is felt on a more subtle level because they take so long to move through each sign. I hope that helps you understand there. So Pluto rules intense energy and shows areas which we consciously or subconsciously seek to rule and exercise power or control over. So Pluto is a planet of control and power. It also shows where you need to gain the deepest level of understanding within yourself and within your life. Okay, so it goes deep within. It's associated with renewal and rebirth, regeneration, and it represents endings and new beginnings, as well as spiritual growth and rebirth. And this is where I think all of this chart on the 11th is guiding us to, is a complete spiritual change and a spiritual growth and rebirth. It can also show us where we have a desire for power and control on a generational level and how that can be disruptive and destructive. It shows us the ways that we need to face these things and make changes in our lives personally and collectively. So Pluto is a big, powerful planet that works with us in a major way. And it's part of this Cardinal Grand Cross at the moment. It's also working with, and has been for a while, the North Node and the South Node. Now the South Node is where we've come from. It's our comfort zone. It's where we begin. We come in from the previous life and we start there. And so that's all the things that we've learnt and we know. And it's always opposing the North Node. So it's always having this energy exchange. Okay, so this Cardinal Grand Cross is a huge energy exchange between these planets. And so they're just popping a bit of pressure onto our way forward, our trajectory. Okay, so the North Node is where we're headed in life. Now how I'm talking about this is on a collective level. It's not on a personal level unless you have planets or points that are working with the transiting planets. Because when when we're born, the planets are at a specific point, and that's what we call our birth chart. But of course the planets kept moving, and we call them transiting planets, and they interact with the planets in your birth chart, and that's where we get these changes in our lives. So when I talk about the north and south node, or where Pluto is at the moment, that's what's transiting, and so that's what's happening for the collective. And you may not be affected in a major way if it's not touching one of your planets in your birth chart. But if it is, it's going to affect you personally and in a major way, because these are major energies. But what I see, even though they're major, they're for our highest and best, because we are, on a collective level, transforming into a new way of being. That the old way that hasn't been beneficial, has been for a while, but now we've come to the peak of that and learnt what we've needed to learn, and now we're transitioning into a more personal level, especially as the North Node moves into Aries. That's all about the self. So we will gain more independence, more strength and more courage, which is perfect timing for everything that's going on. I just see everything in this chart as being perfect for humanity's transition. For those that are aware, and I'm sorry if the rain is drowning me out, for those that are aware that we're going through a transition and working through the renovation of control, limits and restrictions, you will understand this and how purposeful this energy is. But if you're unaware, it could feel like this massive change that you're not ready for. And it could be quite challenging. And this is why I'm doing this video now, is to help you understand why all of this is happening and how we can work through this. Because it's a major time, there's no doubt about that. So, Pluto is retrograde, which means it's moving backwards in Capricorn. And Capricorn is about structures, procedures, and it is a bit of a limiting sign as well. It's a cardinal sign which initiates change. It's also about authority and father figures. So Pluto moving back into Capricorn is about looking at all the things that hasn't been working and could do with some renovation. It's looking at removing anything that doesn't work for humanity, for where we are going, because it's working with the North Node. And as I said, that's where we are headed, into more independence. It's also working with Chiron, which is the wound that we've come to heal. Now that can represent that feeling of I'm not good enough, or I'm afraid of rejection, I'm afraid of how people feel and think about me. It can also be afraid of success. It can be afraid of love. It will depend on where Chiron is for you in your own birth chart. But where Chiron is at the moment, transiting Chiron, is in Aries. So this represents the fear of being independent and being responsible for yourself and making a move, being courageous. And so Pluto is also working there and bringing up all those fears which we can work with. And when we work with those fears and consciously gain more information and study that fear. And the more knowledge you have about that fear, and you'll be able to make little steps then, little steps to conquering that fear, and it will no longer be a fear. Pluto is also working with Neptune in a favourable way. And so this is bringing up more spiritual understandings and remembering who you were in past lives. Remembering and bringing back to you the energy that you had, the skills and the knowledge that you had in those past lives. And bringing them into your being now and utilizing them for this transition. Pluto is also working with Uranus, and Uranus makes changes in surprising ways. So they've been working together for a while, and because they're both outer planets, they've been working more gently, I suppose, and this Cardinal Grand Cross could actually bring some changes in that are more significant, more noticeable. Okay, and then we also have Mercury, as I mentioned before, in Cancer, opposing Pluto. And this means that we can start to think more strongly about how things have been restricted and what is being attempted to restrict our freedom of speech, because Mercury is about communication and speech, and the powers that are trying to stop our speech, our freedom of speech. So we become aware of that. And then we have Mercury working with the South Node, as Pluto is working with the South Node as well. And the South Node is where, as I mentioned before, we are comfortable. The things that we've known, we've lived and gone with the status quo. We know how things work here, and going into something new may be scary, but it's always going to be better, because that's how the universe works. The universe doesn't put us into a new situation if it's going to be detrimental, because the universe is benevolent and works to bring us closer to self-love and unconditional love. But even in these times of change, there can be challenging situations, but if we remember to look at it on the side of love and ask ourselves, what is this asking me to do? How am I being asked to grow here? And for some of us, even those that understand spiritual practice and spiritual law, spiritual principles, and how energy works, It can still be challenging to find those answers. But this is where we connect to our higher self and ask for guidance and support. So from here we have Mars in Virgo. It's 0 degrees of Virgo. And so Virgo is about details, analysing things. And Mars is working with that south node, so analysing where we've come from, looking at those finer details and picking out what is working well and what is not, and making changes, because Mars is about action and energy. So it's looking at how we can act toward our well-being. Virgo is also about values and health, our health and well-being. So we'll be looking at how our health and well-being has been how we have treated our health and well-being in that comfort zone. So where we've felt that perhaps through Pluto, the powers that be know more about our health and well-being than what we have. And now Mars going into Virgo is going, hang on, let's have a look at this. Let's be more active toward our own health and well-being. Let's take back responsibility here. And let's look at what we're eating. Let's look at how we're living and whether those things are healthy for us or not. And let's make some changes. So Venus is in Leo, and Leo is about the home, the tribe, your family, your tribe, and how you protect and provide for your family, your tribe. And that's going to be looked at as well. And we've been in that comfort zone of, yeah, it's all good, we've got this, but now it's being questioned. It's being questioned by Saturn in Pisces. Now, Saturn in Pisces, as I've mentioned in previous posts, it's like the goat who likes this solid ground and climbing, and success is in water. And when, I can tell you, when it rains, the goat will go and seek cover. It does not like being wet at all. But in this case, Saturn is looking for various ways of being successful. And having the courage of Venus in Leo, it has more strength. And Mars in Virgo, it's like Saturn is looking to both of them and going, you need to bring in more of your spiritual practices. You need to understand universal law. You need to be more independent, put more structures in place to be independent and look after yourselves. Can you see how this whole chart is activated? Every single planet, like the sun in Cancer is working with Neptune, bringing in that higher spiritual aspect, highlighting it and bringing it into your home and into your being. And then we have what's called a yod. And this is where Pluto is working with Neptune. So Pluto being your past lives, your soul energy, working with Neptune, which represents your higher self, and bringing those energies into Venus and Mars within yourself. These are personal planets, so these are working personally in our daily lives, bringing in that higher awareness into action and receiving that unconditional love, opening our eyes to the big picture of all of this, going more into community, to helping each other through community. I also feel like this is coming out of not only mainstream media, but social media as well. I've been guided to move away from social media, and we need to do this off social media and perhaps definitely into community. But maybe we need to go to websites and have memberships there rather than doing this on Facebook, because Facebook and YouTube, they're going to be changing, and we need to work with these changes, especially if freedom of speech is going to be in question. I hope you can see where I'm coming from there and where this may need to go to, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, so this yod is like the finger of God. It's a highly spiritual energy. And when you think about that and bring that into all these energies of initiation, rebirth, regeneration, growth, transition, transformation, all of this is coming from a much higher level. And I just think this is such a beautiful thing. And we must be ready. I still think we need to possibly, as I mentioned before, pack a lunch for that day. But definitely support yourself and prepare for some challenging times. Like, what do you need to help you through your challenging times? How can you support yourself? Is that through, getting extra groceries in so you don't have that extra chore of getting those in? Making sure everything's right around the home and, doing those odd jobs that you've been putting off for a while, get them done. So if you need to rest and relax, or you feel like you need time out because things are challenging, then you've got that time. The other aspect, which isn't according to the chart here, is that we are coming to the peak of Sun Cycle 25, which is where we have a higher number of solar flares, coronal mass ejections, which affect us physically, mentally, and emotionally. And there's a rather large sunspot coming around, which may actually be facing Earth around the 11th of July or a few days after, maybe. But I also feel like that is going to be interacting with all these energies as well. So just maybe get some extra comfort food. I don't know, just what do you need to support yourself through what could possibly be a challenging time. I'm not saying it is going to be, but the energy is going to be stronger, but we may be quite cool with it all. We might be ready, you know. We don't need to look at this in a scary negative way, because it's all bringing us higher and moving further into the fifth dimensional consciousness, which is a beautiful place to be. So think of your highest and best. Think about how you really want to live and what you need to remove from your life that isn't working for you anymore. And you've got this. Please connect with me, contact or comment, to gain support from our Facebook page and the people that are there with us. We're all about support. I'm about support for all of us. And, please think on the side of love. Think higher, because that's where we're going. Okay. Take care. Thank you for listening, and bye for now.